At 24, I married my husband after 4 years of being together, but instead of the beach wedding we had always dreamed of, filled with the joyful memories we created there, we ended up having a small, intimate ceremony at his aunt's farmhouse. I had diligently saved for 3 years from my job as an editorial photographer, envisioning a beautiful seaside celebration surrounded by friends and family. However, our plans took a dramatic turn a few months prior when my parents urgently asked to borrow $210,100. They claimed it was for crucial medical treatment for my father, whose sudden illness was supposedly a result of complications from diabetes. They said he needed an expensive imported medication that wasn't covered by insurance. Concerned for his well-being, I didn't hesitate to lend them the money, believing I was helping cover essential medical expenses. As time passed, however, my suspicions began to grow. My mother consistently dodged my requests for medical documentation, and during my visits, my father, although always in bed, didn't seem as ill as they had described. I hesitated to confront them, fearing the fallout if I was wrong. In the midst of this, I learned that my brother Jack had gone on his honeymoon in Europe, funded by the money I had lent our parents under the guise of a medical emergency. He had intended to keep this a secret until he returned, hoping to surprise everyone with stories and photos. This revelation came only after I expressed my concerns about our father's condition, prompting Jack to finally address the issue. Feeling deeply betrayed and manipulated, my husband and I decided to keep our wedding plans quiet and opted for the farmhouse instead. We didn't want to involve my family, who had misused my trust and resources. This choice strained my relationship with my parents, leading to significant emotional and financial repercussions for them. As I withdrew my financial support, after Jack's lavish honeymoon, which our parents funded to the tune of $27,700, I confronted them about the situation. When my mother first requested $210,100 for my father's supposed urgent medical treatment, I didn't hesitate. She mentioned the need for a rare, expensive drug, and given my father's claimed critical condition, I felt it was my duty to help. Yet, as I continued my visits, the severity of the illness they portrayed didn't match my observations. My father didn't appear as unwell as they claimed, and my repeated requests for medical records were brushed aside. I had my doubts but held back from accusing them without solid evidence, wanting to avoid causing family strife over what could be unfounded suspicions. The truth finally came to light when I discussed my concerns with Jack. He casually mentioned his extravagant honeymoon, oblivious to any health crisis at home. It was shocking, especially in light of the urgency my parents had conveyed to me. He revealed that our parents had covered his honeymoon expenses, which included luxury hotel stays, fine dining, and shopping sprees. It became clear to me that there was no medical emergency. My parents had fabricated the entire scenario to redirect my wedding funds toward Jack's honeymoon. The realization that my hard-earned savings were misused left me feeling a profound sense of betrayal. When confronted, my parents admitted to fabricating the medical emergency, justifying that it was the only way they could persuade me to part with the money. They wanted to give Jack a memorable gift without touching their retirement savings, believing I was young and would easily earn the money back. They rationalized that this was a crucial moment for Jack, who needed a break from work-related stress. Their justifications did little to quell my anger. I had scrimped and saved, living modestly to fund my own wedding, and their actions had not only misled me but forced me to scale down my plans significantly. I insisted they repay me before my wedding, as I needed those funds to cover the costs associated with a beach ceremony, which my husband's family was helping with but couldn't fully finance. My parents had made it clear that they could either fund my college education or my wedding, not both. I chose education, knowing I would self-finance my wedding. This situation led me to rethink my entire wedding plans, opting for a smaller, more intimate ceremony at my husband's aunt's farmhouse. While this wasn't the wedding I had envisioned, it transformed into a celebration of our love, untouched by the deceit that loomed over my original dreams. Years later, when Jack began college, I casually asked him if our parents had ever made him choose between funding his education or a wedding, just as they had with me. He laughed, suggesting he hadn't faced the same ultimatum. At the time, I didn't press the issue with my parents. I was still financially reliant on them, having yet to secure a job, and I didn't want to stir family drama by pointing out their apparent favoritism. The issue resurfaced dramatically when I confronted them about using my wedding savings to fund Jack's lavish honeymoon. Despite their denials, it was evident they favored him. I insisted they repay me, unwilling to compromise my wedding dreams because of Jack's job struggles. They could spoil him at their expense, but it was unfair to redirect my hard-earned savings. They responded that they couldn't repay the full amount before my wedding and argued it could take years to do so. They insisted that nothing was more important than family, rationalizing that if I was willing to help with a medical emergency, I should also support Jack's mental health. However, Jack's work issues stemmed from his lackadaisical attitude toward his commission-based web design job. He wasn't genuinely troubled by his job performance. He simply had never learned to strive hard due to a lifetime of being coddled by our parents. I stressed to my parents how crucial this wedding was, not just for me, but also for my future in-laws, as I had financial commitments that I could no longer meet without the funds they had taken. Yet my parents remained firm, insisting they couldn't return the money in time for the wedding. I found myself pleading with them, but their hearts were stone cold, and they assured me they would eventually repay me, just not in time to meet my needs. Leaving their house in tears, I felt utterly defeated. When I confided in my husband, his frustration mirrored mine. He was just as disheartened and angered by my parents' empty promises and their lack of empathy for our situation. In his fury, he considered contacting a lawyer. However, I pointed out that it would be pointless since all our agreements with my parents had been verbal. There was no written evidence that my mother had claimed the money was for medical expenses or that she had promised to repay it. Without contracts, documents, or even text messages to support our claims, pursuing a legal case seemed not only weak but also potentially costly and fruitless. Reluctantly, we decided against any legal action and instead focused on adapting our wedding plans, viewing it as a more constructive use of our energy and resources. In a fortunate twist, my husband's family stepped up to help. His aunt generously offered her farmhouse as a venue free of charge. While it wasn't the beach setting we had envisioned, the farmhouse was beautiful and inviting. Upon visiting, I immediately felt a connection to the place. It was perfect for us given the circumstances. With the venue secured, I dove into wedding planning, which provided a much-needed distraction and solidified my resolve to distance myself from my parents. Initially, I was uncertain about inviting Jack. He hadn't been aware of the funding switch, so his direct involvement felt minimal. However, when he returned from his honeymoon and chastised me for demanding the money back from our parents, claiming Jack's comments made me realize I was making a big deal out of nothing, insisting I should just suck it up and downsize my wedding. His lack of empathy and understanding made it clear that I couldn't invite him. As we moved forward with our plans, the reality of having a less extravagant wedding than I had originally envisioned began to settle in. Surprisingly, this worked out for the best. The scaled-down wedding turned out to be not only beautiful but also a true reflection of who we were, rather than an image we felt pressured to project. It was intimate and genuine, filled with people who truly supported us. Looking back, the constraints imposed by my parents' actions and the resulting reduction in our budget stripped away any pretense, highlighting what was truly important, celebrating our union with those who cared for us unconditionally. The day was perfect because it focused on us, a celebration of our love and commitment rather than an extravagant display. In deciding to scale back our lavish wedding plans, my husband and I chose a more meaningful path. We allocated our budget thoughtfully, prioritizing what truly mattered, being surrounded by those who genuinely cared for us on our special day. The outcome was a dreamy, beautiful ceremony without the unnecessary pomp, proving that a wedding doesn't have to be grand to be memorable. After the wedding, I intentionally shared photos on social media, having ensured that everyone invited kept the event a secret to avoid drama from my parents and Jack. Given our strained relationships, they weren't informed about the wedding, allowing us to enjoy a peaceful, intimate celebration without their interference. However, the day after I posted the wedding photos, my parents and Jack confronted me via phone, demanding to know why they hadn't been invited. Surprisingly, they seemed to expect an invitation despite our last painful interactions, where I had left their house in tears after a heated argument and hadn't spoken to them since. My last conversation with Jack had also left me feeling blamed and hurt. I explained that after they misused my wedding fund, I had to drastically cut costs and decided to invite only close family and friends who genuinely supported us. Their absence was a direct result of their actions and the pain they had caused. Feeling unapologetic yet firm, I ended the call and blocked them, hoping to move forward without further conflict. An hour later, my husband informed me that Jack had reached out to him, sharing that my mother was devastated by my words and had cried to the point of nearly fainting, though I suspected this might be an exaggeration. Hearing this filled me with a surge of guilt. I questioned whether I had been too harsh, despite their betrayal. Now, a week later, I find myself contemplating the consequences of my decisions during and after the wedding. It's a complex mix of relief for having a beautiful celebration that felt true to us and lingering sadness over the deepening family rift, leaving me to wonder if things could have been handled differently. After that last intense conversation with my parents and Jack, I resolved to cut off communication with them. My mother's tears wouldn't change the truth of the situation. On the day I confronted them about the misuse of my wedding fund, I had been the one in tears, desperately pleading for them to return the money before my wedding. They dismissed my feelings, treating the matter lightly, so I chose to distance myself and minimize their impact on my life. It's true what they say, you reap what you sow. I explicitly told Jack to cease contact, acting on behalf of both myself and my husband. My husband was uninvolved in these family issues, and I wanted to shield him from their petty antics. After sending that message, I blocked Jack to cut off any remaining access they had to me. My family had mistreated me for years, and I was determined not to tolerate it any longer. While a lawsuit seemed far-fetched given the lack of tangible evidence, my husband believed it was worth exploring. He began consulting with a reputable lawyer, and we planned to decide soon whether to pursue legal action. Our goal was to hold my parents accountable for misleading me about the supposed emergency that diverted my money into Jack's lavish honeymoon. Proving this in court would be challenging, but I felt compelled to ensure they were held responsible. I deserved my money back, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to make that happen. Yesterday, I emphasized to Jack the importance of keeping my husband out of our family drama. Ironically, this led him to do the exact opposite. After work, my husband informed me that my parents and Jack had bombarded him with texts, demanding that he convince me to unblock them. When he ignored their messages, they escalated things by showing up at his workplace, waiting outside and following his car when he left, honking until he pulled over, knowing they wouldn't relent and might follow him home. He decided to confront them directly to prevent further disturbances at our house. They met at a nearby diner for a private discussion. Inside, Jack approached my husband's car window and insisted they talk in person. Once seated, Jack expressed his belief that our parents were deeply hurt by my actions and that family should come first, suggesting that we should reconcile. However, my husband, having witnessed the distress and manipulation I'd endured, stood firmly by my side. We both agreed it was essential not to let their guilt tactics sway us from protecting our peace and pursuing what felt right. After the last tumultuous conversation with my parents and Jack, I resolved to cut ties completely. My family viewed my decision to sever contact over the mishandling of my wedding fund as excessive and even accused me of overreacting by suggesting we weren't family anymore. They attempted to reach out through my husband, hoping he could persuade me to reconsider, emphasizing that family should stick together despite the financial issues. They reiterated their promise to return the money but insisted it couldn't be done all at once, citing Jack's work struggles and their impending retirement as reasons for the delay. My husband played a crucial role during this interaction. Instead of confronting them directly, he cleverly made them feel heard, suggesting that a heartfelt message from them might help resolve the conflict. Naively, they took his advice, thinking it could soften my stance and lead to reconciliation. Little did they know, my husband was subtly steering them to admit their actions in writing, providing us with the evidence we needed to pursue legal action. I must admit I'm quite impressed, and even a bit proud, of how ingeniously my husband handled the situation. His strategy paid off, and soon we received an email from my parents outlining their deceptions and essentially confessing to their misuse of my funds. This email was the admission of guilt we needed to move forward legally. We are now working with our lawyer to recover the $210,100, money that represents 4 years of hard work, careful saving, and personal sacrifices. It's not just about the amount, it's about justice and principle. My parents and Jack made their choices, and now they must face the consequences. Amidst this legal battle, we've also begun planning our honeymoon. We're opting for a modest getaway to the beach, a place of special significance for us, marking both the beginning of our relationship challenges and a spot filled with countless happy memories. This decision reflects our realization that happiness doesn't require grand gestures or excessive spending. The essence of our life together lies in enjoying simple, meaningful moments. This experience has profoundly reminded me that we control our happiness and the direction of our lives, not the expectations or actions of others. Now, we look forward to a future filled with love, integrity, and the simple joys that truly bring us contentment.